Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's telephone town hall with Food Policy Action. Tonight, we'll be discussing how the decisions elected officials in Washington make, like your representative Steve Sutherland, affect the quality of the food we eat and how you can hold them accountable. My name is Evan, and I will be the moderator for tonight's event. We'll begin in just a moment, and we're excited to have all of you join us. But before we begin, just a few quick points to make. Right now, we're in the process of dialing out to thousands of Floridians. So just stay on the line, and we'll be hearing from our featured speaker, Chef Tom Colicchio, and the rest of our panel in just a moment. Also, this is an interactive event, and we really want to hear from you. If you would like to ask a question, please press 0 on your telephone keypad, and you'll be connected directly to one of our volunteer operators. Again, if you want to ask a question on this call, just press 0 to get in line. For those of you who are just joining us, good evening, and welcome to tonight's telephone town hall with Chef Tom Colicchio and Food Policy Action. My name is Evan, and I will be moderating for tonight's event. We're going to begin in just a moment, and thanks everyone for joining in. Right now, we are dialing out to thousands of Floridians, so stay on the line, and we will hear from our featured speaker, Chef Tom Colicchio, and the rest of our panel in just a moment. Again, for everyone just joining, if you want to ask a question, this is an interactive event, and we want to hear from you, so please press 0 at any time during the event. Again, just press 0 at any time to ask a question. And now, without further delay, I want to introduce our first speaker, Chef Tom Colicchio.
I want to thank everybody for your participation in tonight's event. I've spent more than 3 decades working in the food industry, and if there's one thing that's become really clear to me, is that a few things have as much impact in our lives as food. However, many of the most important decisions that determine our food options are not made in the grocery store or even at our kitchen table. Instead, they're being made by our elected officials in Washington. The legislators vote on policies to determine how we grow, produce, manufacture, and market food in this country, but not all of our decision makers come down on the right side of these issues. Food Policy Action gives voters the information they need to make informed decisions on Election Day, so they can be sure they've cast their ballot for the candidates that share their values for good food policy. Our organization is committed to holding elected officials accountable for the positions on food issues. So it is important for us that we acknowledge the good food work those Floridian legislators who vote to feed hungry people, support family farmers and food workers, protect the environment, and promote healthy food. But it is equally important that voters know which of their representatives have consistently made the wrong choice on food policy and prioritize agribusiness over the everyday needs of Florida's families. So I'll now turn it over to my colleague Ken Cook, who could speak of the voting record of one member of Congress who was guilty of voting against common sense food policies for Floridians. Ken?
Tom, thanks so much. Good evening, everyone. As Tom mentioned, we're here tonight to discuss the important food issues that impact Florida families, and specifically Representative Steve Sutherland's voting record on those policies. Over the past 2 years, Representative Sutherland has repeatedly voted to cut funding for nutrition assistance for vulnerable groups like veterans, women, and children. He has rolled back funding for healthy food initiatives and voted against important food safety measures that would keep E. coli and pesticides out of our food. In 2013 alone, Representative Sutherland also led the way in blocking the Farm Bill, a traditionally bipartisan piece of legislation that has tremendous impact on the country's food and farm policy. Sutherland's poison pill amendment would have given cash incentives to states if they denied food assistance to people who have not been able to find work, including veterans. Members of Congress from both sides of the aisle were extremely critical of Steve Sutherland for his actions. He has continuously demonstrated that his loyalties lie with big agribusiness, not with Florida families, and Floridians frankly deserve better. We would now like to get some feedback from the people who matter most in this debate, Florida voters. After a short poll, we will open the call up to questions and give participants the opportunity to learn more about the food issues at stake in this election.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Tom. For those of you who have just joined the event, welcome to our telephone town hall. My name is Evan, and I will be moderating our discussion tonight. And as Ken mentioned, this is an interactive telephone town hall. If you have a question, just press 0 to get in line to ask your question. That's all you have to do to get in line to ask a question of Ken Cook or Chef Tom Colicchio. Just press 0. As Ken mentioned, we are going to start with our first poll question. And you can respond to this poll question simply by pressing a button on your phone keypad. And we want to know what is most troubling to you about Representative Steve Sutherland's record on protecting the food our families eat. Again, you can respond just by pressing a button on your phone. Press 1 if you are most troubled by the fact that he has voted to cut food stamp benefits for veterans, families, and seniors. Press 2 if it's because he opposes important food safety measures that would keep E. coli and pesticides out of our food. And press 3 if it's because he votes to protect big agriculture companies over the interests of Florida families. Again, we're asking a poll question of everyone on our call, and the question is this: what is most troubling to you about Representative Steve Sutherland's record on protecting the food our families eat? Press 1 if it's because he voted to cut food stamp benefits for veterans, families, and seniors. Press 2 if it's because he opposes important food safety measures that would keep E. coli and pesticides out of our food. And press 3 if it's because he votes to protect big agriculture companies over the interests of Florida families. And again, if you have a question, all you have to do is press 0 to get in line. And we are going to go to our first question right now. We've got Mike from Tallahassee on the line. Mike, are you on the line with a question?
Yep, I'm here, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course, go ahead.
So in the opening statement, you said that Sutherland isn't looking out for families. Can you explain what you mean by that?
That's a great question, Mike. I think that's best for Ken.
Yes, exactly. Over the past 2 years, Representative Sutherland has voted to cut funding for programs that provide basic food assistance for families struggling to put food on the table. That includes veterans who've been defending us and may have come home and had trouble getting a job when they left the service. Representative Sutherland's measure would have cut funding for programs that those veterans often rely on. He's also rolled back funding for food safety workers, and he actually voted against a safety measure that would protect our food from bacteria like E. coli that can make you very sick, and pesticides, which are harmful to both the environment and to our bodies, and frankly, most harmful, most worrisome of all for our kids. But what really sets Mr. Sutherland apart is that he tried to add a measure to the Farm Bill that would have given cash incentives to states for kicking food stamp recipients, SNAP recipients, off the program, even though they've been unable to find work. And again, that includes veterans.
Thank you so much, Mike, for that question, and Ken for that response. Again, if you want to ask a question just like Mike did, all you have to do is press 0 to get in line. And we do have the results of that first poll that we were doing a little bit earlier in the call. Again, we were asking you what you found most troubling about Representative Steve Sutherland's record on protecting the food our families eat. And it turns out a whole 57%, over half of the people on the call, find the most troubling part of Representative Sutherland's record is that he's voted to cut food stamp benefits for veterans, families, and seniors. All of these are great reasons to be worried, and we want to hear from you about your thoughts on this issue. Press 0 to get in line to ask a question. Lynn from Centerville did that. We are going to go now to Lynn. Do you have a question, Lynn?
Hi there. My question is, what is your organization doing nationally to make food a higher priority?
Great question, Lynn. I think that's good for Ken as well.
Lynn, thanks so much. Food Policy Action engages in many different activities to educate the public on how Congress is, or in many cases is not, voting the way that we need Congress to vote to improve our food system, to make it better. So our goal is to have the public use information on how members of Congress are voting to hold their elected officials accountable. And ultimately, we want to make food matter as much in Washington as it does in places like Florida, as it does for your family. Just 2 weeks ago, Food Policy Action released our third annual National Food Policy Scorecard, which is a very quick and easy tool for the public to use to find out how members of the House and Senate voted on critical food policy issues. So it's our job to make sure that voters have access to that information so they can ensure that they're voting for candidates who will uphold Florida values for safe, healthy, and affordable food.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Len, for that question. Again, if you have a question, all you have to do to get in line to ask your question live on our telephone town hall with Ken Cook and Chef Tom Colicchio is press 0. Megan from Panama City, press 0, and Megan has a question. Are you on the line, Megan?
Yes, I'm here. I am calling from Panama City, like you said, and I'm voting for Gwen Graham, and I was just wondering what else can I do to help related to food issues.
Great question, Megan. I think, Tom, that's a good one for you.
Sure. It's great to hear that you're supporting Gwen. She really stands up for Florida's families, and you're right, there's a lot more that can be done besides just casting a ballot. At Food Policy Action, we're really working hard to make food a kitchen table issue. There's so many things that I don't think that we've sort of educated ourselves when it comes to various issues that are voted on, in Congress. Issues of food safety, issues of making the right foods affordable, issues of welfare for our making sure that there's safety involved in producing food. So there's a lot of different things, making sure that school lunches are healthy and accessible to as many people as possible. What really strikes me is that from 2013 to 2014, SNAP recipients almost grew by 1 million people in Florida, and yet at the same time, Steve Sutherland is looking to actually cut SNAP. And so SNAP is a program that actually grows when the need grows. And so you see, as it appears that the economy is picking up, and certainly Wall Street is picking up, but the average person still isn't feeling it. And so there's a need, and it's growing, and we can meet these needs and needs across the country and in Florida, but we need to have people who understand that people are struggling and need to support programs that will put food on the table, and also support programs to help people get on their feet so they can actually take care of themselves. So yeah, there's a lot that can be done before Election Day. At Food Policy Action, you can actually come right to our website and you can see all these issues that are being voted on. And so it's a great tool to educate yourself on the sort of the everyday food issues that are so important to all of us.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Megan. You're right, there's a lot that you can do before Election Day. There's also a lot you can do on Election Day, too. So I want to go to our second polling question of the night here, and that is, can we count on you, the listener, to vote against Steve Sutherland this election and protect the health and nutrition of our seniors, our families, and our veterans? If we can, if you will vote against Steve Sutherland, press 1. If you will not, press 2. And if you're unsure or undecided at this point, press 3. Again, the question for tonight, can we count on you to vote against Steve Sutherland this election and protect the health and nutrition of our seniors, families, and veterans? Press 1 if you will be voting against Steve Sutherland, press 2 if you will not, and press 3 if you are unsure. We're going to go right back to the phones now. Again, if you have a question, all you have to do is press 0 to get in line to ask a question. Our next question comes from Carlton James. Carlton, are you on the line?
Yes. Every time we go to this, I have to go to the food bank once a month because of the fact of the matter is I don't even get enough to support myself or the family that I take in. Why is it? Why aren't they doing anything about the prices or the price gouging of this grocery store around here that's marking up food that's so high?
Carlton, that's a great question. I believe, Tom, you referred to a little bit about what they were talking about before. You want to field this one?
Sure. Again, we need elected officials that actually pay attention to this stuff and to make sure that no one is price gouging. But also, there's a concept of food deserts where you can't find really good fresh fruits and vegetables in certain communities. In fact, many communities across Florida and across the United States. This is exactly why we need elected officials who care about people and care about food issues, so we make sure that food is accessible and affordable to all. Thanks for your call, your question.
Definitely, thank you. And if you want to ask a question on the call, all you have to do, just like Carlton, is press 0 to get in line. Again, just press 0 to get in line to ask a question. We're going to go now to John from Tallahassee, who has a question. John, go ahead with your question.
Hi, I was wondering, is Gwen Graham going to be better than Steve Sutherland on food issues?
John, that's a great question.
Yeah, hey, John,
Tom,
this is
go
Tom. Thanks for calling in. In Gwen's own words, she believes that supporting agriculture shouldn't have to be a political issue. She knows that what's good for local farmers is really good for Florida. Steve Sutherland, on the other hand, has a consistent record of being just terrible on everything from food safety to protecting the most vulnerable people in our communities. Graham has also said that she believes that Florida veterans deserve the best possible benefits available, and she believes that our veterans who are out of work should never have to worry about their next meal. She said that in one of her debates. I listened to one of her debates, and they shouldn't have to, when they come home from fighting our wars, worry about where the next meals come from. They've risked their lives to defend our country, and we should be there when they fall in hard times. They're going to get back up on their feet, but we need to help them, and Gwen Graham will help them get back on their feet. So, I believe she will be better on these issues.
Thanks, Tom. And thank you, John, for asking that question. Again, just press 0 to get in line to ask a question. Chef Tom Colicchio and Ken Cook on our call. We're going to go now to Jenny in Crawfordsville. Jenny, are you on the line with a question?
Hi, yes, I'm Jenny B. Jones from Crawfordsville. My question is concerning the school lunches. What are we doing? I know what we said we should be doing, but what are we doing to make our school lunches more healthier and tastier?
That's a great question, Jenny. Ken, do you want to field this one?
I'll field it very briefly because Chef Colicchio has been just a fantastic advocate for doing that. Two quick things I would say. It's a great question. First of all, we need to recognize that as the most powerful country in the world, we are not going to maintain that role, that position, if we don't treat our kids well. And that starts with making sure that when, in many cases, the only good meal some kids unfortunately get during the course of a day is going to be that school lunch, we need to invest enough to make sure that the food we give them is quality food. Secondly, and it goes to the point of this call, we have been working very hard to let the public know and to let members of Congress know that we are watching this debate on school lunch. We're watching it very carefully. And we're going to be looking for leadership from people in the Congress to make sure that when important votes come up about spending enough money to have a program that really works and making sure that when the program's working, it's giving kids quality food, not junk food, we're going to make sure that if those issues are voted on, everyone in the public that has the time to take a quick look at our scorecard knows how Steve Sutherland and everyone else might have voted on that. Of course, we hope Mr. Sutherland won't be around to vote anymore, but the fact of the matter is we do know that this is going to be a really critical issue.
Yeah, let me jump in here. Jen, I'm glad you asked this question. School lunch is something that's really important to me. My mother actually managed a school cafeteria when I was a kid growing up, and so a real important issue for me. We passed 4 years ago, the Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act that actually created some higher standards for school lunch. There was actually more money for the reimbursements for school lunch. And so we've actually trying to make lunch better. And at the same time, recently, we have certain politicians that are actually trying to roll these standards back and try to bring junk food back into the cafeterias. We have to fight against this. What's really important about this question you asked is just next year, coming up next year, we'll have to reauthorize this program. And there's already a lot of people in Washington trying to cut these programs again after we finally made some modest gains. And not only is lunch important, but school breakfast is even as important, if not more important. There's a whole movement that we want to take school breakfast and move it out of before school starts and move it to the first period. And we're finding huge advantages to this. In fact, there was a study done recently that math scores go up by 17% when kids get breakfast in first period. And so these are things that we're fighting for as hard as we can, and this is exactly why we need to have good leaders in Congress who will vote for these programs to make sure that they're good for our kids. You know, the kids are the future of this country, and if kids don't go to school, if they go to school hungry, they can't learn. If they're not getting healthy food in school, they're going to end up having too much sugar, too much fat, and they're not healthy. We need healthy kids to have a healthy America. This is a great question, and this is also something that you should watch very closely because we're going to be voting on this next year, so we need to send the right person to Congress to make the right vote on this issue. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Jenny, and of course, Ken as well for those responses and that question. If you want to ask a question, again, all you have to do is just press 0 on your phone. We'll put you in line on the phone with Chef Tom Colicchio and Ken Cook. We are going to go back to the phones. Let's hear from Florence in Tallahassee. Florence, are you on the line with a question?
Yes, I'm on line with the question. Well, my question here is, I really embrace the idea of the food program, but I remember a couple of days I had just gone to 2 different stores to buy me some vegetables. When I went to when I went to Walmart, the price of broccoli was 3 times the price of the one I went to down South Monroe. I'd save a lot. Why is it the price is so high in different stores, in different environments?
Florence, that's a great question. Ken, do you want to go ahead and field this one?
I'm happy to, and it's a great question. We hear it all the time. I think, again, there are lots of reasons why companies figure out what they think they can charge and maximize their profits. And sometimes it's one grocery chain, sometimes it's another. But I will tell you this, I really do believe this is the case, that for too long we have not had legislators who are looking out for the public for specific issues exactly like this. Tom said it very well. He said we want to make food a kitchen table issue around election time, something people are talking about, conversations like the one you've just started with that question. And to be honest, I think we need more oversight to understand exactly what makes food prices go up and down, what makes one store charge more than the other. The best way to do that is to make sure we have adequately funded agencies that have the resources they need to track the food system, to not just turn it over to these big agribusiness operations and big supermarket chains, and make sure that there aren't situations where folks in certain parts of Florida might be getting gouged by prices that are too high. So I think it's very, very important that we do that, and I also think it's important that we understand that sometimes, and this goes to a point that was raised in our earlier poll, we're not supporting the kind of agriculture that produces healthy, affordable broccoli. We're supporting agribusinesses that grow all kinds of big industrial crops like corn and cotton and soybeans. Nothing wrong with those crops, but the fact of the matter is if we were investing a little bit more money in trying to encourage farmers to grow things that are healthy and grow more of it, those prices would start to come down for all of us. And we need that to happen because right now the food that's in many cases cheapest, most affordable, is the food that's not very good for you. It's loaded with sugar, loaded with salt and fat. And what we want to do is have a food system that's producing healthier food for our kids, for all of us, for our families. And in order to do that, we need a different set of investment priorities. Steve Sutherland's on the wrong side of that issue, too. He's consistently voting for these big agribusiness interests, some of the most profitable, largest farming operations in the country. They're getting more subsidy money, while farmers that are trying to grow local fruits and vegetables, they're not getting the support that would really help them make it in the marketplace and get more affordable foods like broccoli and other fruits and vegetables into those local stores.
Thanks, Ken. And Florence, thank you so much for that excellent question. Again, if you want to ask a question, I know you're probably sick of hearing me say it over and over again, but if you do want to ask a question, all you have to do is press 0 to get in line. We're going to go to Mary next. Mary, do you have a question for our panel? Mary, are you there? Okay. Looks like we may have lost Mary. Her question was, about the promises that officials make but never follow through on, specifically about food stamps. She wonders why younger people are getting food stamps when they can work, whereas she's retired and on food stamps. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about food stamps in general?
Yeah, if she's worried about why younger people are on food stamps, sometimes younger people aren't working. And often food stamp recipients, almost half of food stamp recipients, are actually working, but they're working in minimum wage jobs and can't afford to feed their families. And so there's a lot of reasons why people receive food stamps. The fact also that someone young is receiving food stamps doesn't mean your benefit changes at all. It's a program that's at need. Food stamps should be available for those that need food stamps. Also, I want to point out that food stamps, there's a lot of people that talk about fraud in food stamps. Food stamps has about a 1 to 2% fraud. In fact, it's one of the lowest instances of fraud in any government program. And so if you hear people saying about fraud in food stamps, it's just tell them the answer is no. It's not the case. But again, most people are also, if they're on food stamps, 2 years after, they're not anymore. So this is really a program that supplements people's income so they can actually afford food, feed their families, but also to get off of assistance so they can get out there and start working. The last 5-6 years have been very, very tough on working people. You see, there has been a recovery, but a lot of the recovery has gone to jobs that don't pay a lot of money. So you're seeing a lot of working families, people that are working 2 jobs, people that have at least 2 people in the family working, still not making enough money to make their ends meet, and they have to turn towards food assistance. But again, I think we need to stop looking at these programs as a handout and looking at them as an investment so people can actually get on their feet and get moving again. Most of the people, my wife made a film a couple of years ago about hunger in America, and the fact that 47 million Americans are struggling to feed themselves. In Florida, again, almost 3.5 million people are receiving food stamp benefits. And it's not because they're lazy. It's not because they want to sit around all day. It's because they can't find work. Or work they're finding isn't adequate enough. And so again, we need to understand these programs a little better. And also understand that food stamps, it's what's known as a counter-cyclical program. So as the need increases, the program actually meets that need. When the need starts to decrease, you won't have as many people on food stamps as well. So again, there's a lot of reasons, but this is a program that works. It's been a program that has been working pretty much since 1933, and so it's a program that really keeps people from really having nothing to eat. Also, you've got to understand that in most cases, food stamps run out 3/4 of the way through the month, and so it's not a huge benefit per family, but it really, really does help protect people and get them through some tough times.
Great. Thank you so much for that response, Tom. There are a lot of misconceptions about food stamps, and it's really, really great to have advocates like you who can help explain how important this program really is. We're going to hear some more questions. Again, if you have a question, just press 0 to get in line. I've got Carlton on the line. Carlton, do you have a question for one of our speakers?
Yeah, why are they making it so hard for people to survive these days? I mean, people have to go to food banks. Even the food banks are running out, and they just cut food stamps just all of a sudden. I mean, it's like they really don't want to help anybody anymore. Even the food stamps administration place where you go to apply for it, they got nobody there to help you. They just got one single computer. So
right.
Yeah, that's a great question, Carlton. Ken, do you want to address that?
Well, there are many members in Congress who do want to make it possible to have a food stamp program that provides adequate resources, gets people enrolled efficiently, make sure that the benefits that people receive are benefits that can allow them to buy healthy foods, and we all know that this is a program that requires very, very tough rules. in order for you to qualify. So there are members in the House of Representatives who are in favor of strengthening that program and making it more effective, making it work better for people like you, Carlton. Steve Sutherland is not one of them. Mr. Sutherland has voted time and time again to undercut the program, weaken the program, including for not just families, but families that have veterans in them, families that have kids in them, families that have seniors in them. And so from our standpoint, the one of the critical questions, and I'm so glad it came up as a top concern for folks on this call, we really need to have in this country some sense that people who are hungry are going to get, and who may be down on their luck or may have difficulty where they're living if the jobs have dried up and have not come back yet. We need to have a system in this country in place to make sure that folks have the dignity and the availability of good, healthy food. And the food stamp program is critical to that. But I'm sorry to say, very sorry to say, that Representative Steve Sutherland has probably been the single most effective opponent of a responsible and effective food stamp program in Congress. Probably number one when it comes to trying to weaken that program. And we don't want him around for another term because he might even be able to try and weaken it even more.
Yeah. Let me just jump in here for a second, Carlton. There's food stamps. There's two sort of sides of this. One is it's funded by the federal government, so that's sort of everything that happens in Washington. But then the local states have to administer it. So if you're finding that you go to a food stamp office and there's no one there, that's your governor's problem. And so that's Governor Scott, who's also trying to make it very difficult for people to receive food stamps. The money's there from the federal government. If it's not being administered properly in the state, that's your governor's fault. And so I also urge you, when you go to vote on Tuesday or tomorrow, whenever you're going to vote, vote for Charlie Crist. I think it'll be much better on this stuff, and I think you need a governor who actually takes care of people as well.
Carlton, thank you so much for that question. Ken and Tom, your answers as always. Let's go back to the phones. We're going to hear from Barbara in Tallahassee. Barbara, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here. I almost forgot my question. What I was going to ask was, in the first question you had asked about the food safety and preventing E. coli and contaminants and pesticides, I'm not sure what's being done about that, and what would Graham do to help that?
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I think Gwen Graham would be much better on this, but let's talk about Steve Sutherland for a second, because he voted against so many various bills that would have helped on food safety. He cut funding that would have actually applied better nutrition to protect against E. coli and contamination of food. He also voted against Clean Water Acts that would have actually made sure that pesticides, that you would need a permit before you discharge pesticides into the water. He voted against a Clean Water Act that would have increased funding for the Environmental Protection Agency to take care of some of these water issues. Also voted against a Food and Drug Administration bill that would have added funding for inspection. So we have more food inspectors. So he's just really been terrible on so many food safety issues as well. Again, from Gwen Graham's comments, she believed that food safety is really important, and she believed in a lot of local issues for local farmers and the like. So I don't know her record. She hasn't voted on these issues, but I do know Steve Sutherland's records, and his record has been terrible when it comes to food safety.
Thanks, Tom, for that response, and of course, Barbara, for that excellent question. Let's hear now from Ruby in Panama City. Ruby, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, Ruby.
I would like to know if all the additives and preservatives in our meat is what making our children grow so big now. and people, are so much larger than they used to be. So, and I don't think it's just from eating. I think that maybe it has something to do with all these additives in the food.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ruby. Ken, do you want to address the issue of additives in our food?
I'm happy to. Ruby, thanks for bringing that up. Our sense is that what we really need when it comes to food additives is much more of a watchdog in Congress and much less of a lapdog. We have a situation now where food companies are putting all kinds of chemical ingredients into foods. They put chemicals in to color the food and change the texture of the food, change the flavor and the aroma of food. Thousands and thousands of food additives are perfectly legal to be put into food. In Europe, they are much stricter, much more careful about what they allow, and we often find that the first indications of a problem with a food additive, whether it might be something that is potentially carcinogenic, something that could cause cancer, in other words, an additive that might contribute to problems with the nervous system, or an additive that, as you suggest, might affect our children in some way or another. A lot of the first signals that there's a problem come not from our own federal agencies, because they're underfunded in many cases. They don't have the research capacity. The news hits us from Europe, where they're taking this much more seriously. So I think when you have the choice between someone who believes that agribusiness should dictate what exactly we eat, and it's none of our business necessarily what's in the food, it's really not up to us at all, and the government should take a back seat, that's the attitude that Steve Sutherland brings to these issues. I can tell you it's clear throughout his voting record on food safety and lots of other issues. I think what we see in Gwen Graham, someone who sees that there's a responsible, important role for the government to be protecting us, to be serving as our watchdog, not the lapdog of the agribusiness world. And from our standpoint, that makes it a very clear choice in this election. Gwen Graham, we think, is going to look out after people. And we think Steve Sutherland's going to look out after profits. And it's a lot of profit in putting all those additives into our food.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to jump in. It's interesting that we expect our government to protect us from invasions and like ISIS and things that could be harmful. But at the same time, we should expect our government to protect us from harmful additives that are in our food. And so it just makes common sense that we would send someone to Congress who actually cares about food safety issues and about what is in our food. Again, we need protection from various sources, not just foreign invasion. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you both for tackling this important issue. We're going to hear more callers in just a moment, but I do want to remind everyone that we do have polling questions that we can run as well. So the next question tonight is going to be, after listening to our speakers, do you feel more inclined to vote against Representative Steve Sutherland this election? If you do, all you have to do is press 1. Again, press 1 if you're more inclined to vote against Representative Steve Sutherland this election after having heard all of our speakers, Chef Tom Colicchio and Ken Cook, on the call. Now let's go back to the phones. We've got Cindy on the line. Cindy, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you so much for taking my question. I was just wondering, how is your organization working to campaign against Steve Sutherland?
Well, that's a great question, Cindy. Tom, do you want to field this one?
Yes. Okay, sure. 1 second. I was distracted for a second. Sorry. Food Policy Action is engaged in a $1 million effort to educate the public on how their elected officials vote on food policy. And we've made Steve Sutherland our #1 target because he's ignored the needs of Florida families and families across the country. He's consistently voted against good food policy. So we're organizing events like this telephone town hall. We've also launched a digital ad campaign to educate voters on Sutherland's record. And we wanted to make sure that Florida voters know what's at stake here if Sutherland wins this election.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom. And Cindy, thank you so much for that question. We've heard a lot of questions on the call tonight from people across the entire state. I want to be mindful of everyone's time on the call, so we will begin wrapping up the call. Please stay on the line if you had a question that you did not get a chance to ask. At the end of this call, you'll be able to leave us a voicemail with that question, and we will get back to you. But right now, I want to invite Tom. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make at the end of this call?
Sure. First off, I want to thank everyone who took the time to call in and discuss this very important issue at stake for Florida's families in this upcoming election. I know we're all busy people and have a lot to do, so I really want to thank you for calling in. We've heard some great questions, and most importantly, we got to hear from Floridians about food issues that matter most to their families. This election has the potential to dictate whether or not Florida's hungry has access to food. It'll also impact the success of family farms, food workers, and what protocols and measures are put in place to ensure that our food is produced safely. And your input and participation tonight has been invaluable. So again, thank you very much, and get out there and vote.
Thank you, Tom. Ken, do you have anything that you'd like to add at the end of this call?
Well, I would like to add my thanks. I want to reiterate just something Tom just said. You all have a real opportunity to determine the future of Florida's food policy, the quality and affordability of the food that's available in Florida. The election is just a few days away, and this is one where every single last vote is going to count. So if you support food policy that makes common sense, you want to ensure that you and your family have access to food that's safe and healthy and affordable, vote on Election Day. Please make sure you cast your ballot and become part of a better decision-making process. Let's take our government back here a little bit. One that does not involve Representative Steve Sutherland. So thank you for joining us for this call. We couldn't get to every question, unfortunately, but if you do have additional questions, please stay on the line, and you'll be able to leave a voicemail at the end of the event. Thanks for your time, and remember, please vote against Steve Sutherland in this election on November 4th. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this call. Just stay on the line to leave your voicemails, and once again, please, please, please get out there, vote on November 4th, vote against Steve Sutherland. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night.